Okay, great. We're switching to English. So that's good for you, Lars from Denmark, and our friends at NewSec as well. Finally understand what we're talking about. But it's going to be the only session. And you, Hugrun, of course. But it's going to be the only session in English. We have an international speaker. We have an international superstar. She joined Snowflake in the early years in San Mateo, and she has held a variety of roles at Snowflake. Currently, she is strategy and analytic business partner for EMEA marketing. Welcome, Blaine Carper.
Thank you. And we wanted to give you all a small gift from Snowflake as a congratulations for your 10 years. So here is
Thank you
some
very much.
champagne for you all to enjoy.
I
Thank you
take them
so
all.
much for having us. Yes, all for you. And before I get started, first of all, let me say thank you for having me. But also, we've got a big pile of swag over there. So after the session, feel free to step over, have some, pick something up. And also, in the interest of getting lots of questions, if you have any, then you get your choice of swag afterward. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So I run Snowflake's EMEA Marketing Intelligence team. And many of you might ask, well, what is marketing intelligence? Well, we're in the business of predicting real-time ROI to optimize our marketing programs and advance our marketing go-to-market strategy. Now, it takes a lot of data and a very streamlined architecture in order to accomplish our marketing analytics remit. And as you can see in this slide, my team employs a very holistic and data-rich ecosystem that's built on Snowflake to deliver insights to our stakeholders. And a key part of this ecosystem is our data science workload, which we've leveraged to build a number of predictive models, including the one that I'm going to speak about today, that I'm most excited about, our pipeline analytics model. And these are all used to drive our marketing programs, but most importantly, they're used to drive growth. So, on that note, let's get into it. Now, before we dive into the actual mechanics of the pipeline forecasting model, I want to set the scene for why we built this. Namely, what was our reason and what were our challenges, and ultimately, what was our solution? So why do we care about pipeline? I mean, that seems like an intuitive question, right? We care because sales needs pipeline to close business, but that's really only part of the story. Pipeline is directly linked to company growth, and fundamentally, pipeline is your number one indicator of bookings and revenue. But it's also what brings marketing and sales together, with marketing driving the top of the funnel activity that is fueling the sales forecast. And finally, it's what defines where teams are investing their time and their resources. Pipeline is the central focus of three major teams. So we have finance, marketing, and sales. Now, their use cases may be different, but ultimately they're all looking toward the same goal, and that's company growth. With marketing, they're focused on driving pipeline. Sales, bookings, and finance is looking to effectively forecast revenue. And so they all require accurate and reliable forecasts in order to make those critical business decisions. Now, for Snowflake and any other data-driven organization, it's key that these teams aren't siloed. They need to all be looking at the same data, using it the same way, speaking the same language, and ultimately drawing the same picture of the company's pipeline position. So our pipeline forecasting model enabled our teams to do just that. So now that we've defined why we needed it, let's look at the different challenges that we've faced. Based on our research, we see a few major roadblocks in getting to a reliable forecast. Often, we see very long and complex sales cycles in the enterprise space, where life cycles are difficult to predict and the forecast is fairly unreliable because it's fluctuating. But no matter the size or the length of the sales cycle, you see a lot of human-driven processes. So we're getting very nuanced customer journeys, and more often than not, all of those touch points are recorded across multiple systems and with varying levels of data quality. So immediately you have a disconnect between your people and with your systems. And with so much disconnect, it's almost impossible to get an accurate picture of what your forecast looks like. So this means your sales and marketing teams might be addressing your pipeline in different ways based on their own understanding of the opportunities, rather than aligning on a unified approach. And the current state of forecasting solutions doesn't make this any easier. Whether you are using a CRM-based solution or a commercial model, they either don't scale or they're really inflexible and difficult to customize. And at Snowflake, we'd actually even tried one of these solutions, but for us, it just didn't work because it couldn't grow with our business. So to meet these challenges, we chose to self-build using our Snowflake data platform. And by bringing this solution in-house, we could develop a completely customized and scalable model that leveraged all of the data that you saw in one of those first slides that is necessary for us to get a reliable pipeline forecast at Snowflake. So what does the build actually look like? Why is it driving success? Why is it driving growth? Well, the key business objective of this whole project, this entire forecasting model, is to provide that complete picture, but also to allow us to look not just this quarter, but next quarter and the next. We're talking about a predictive model now. And we met this business objective through building a machine learning model that predicts the likelihood of opportunities being in forecast on the first day of the quarter in which they're forecasted to close. And what that means is that now we can intelligently predict how much pipeline we're going to have on the first day of the quarter. And this is so key for any team that's touching pipeline because it means that we can objectively prioritize using data and support at-risk teams before their pipeline gaps become an issue. We're also able to make smarter investments in the different programs that we're running and optimize them so that it's going to serve those at-risk teams. And ultimately, by addressing these gaps before they become our reality in that quarter, we're ensuring that we are actively driving company growth. So this is one of my favorite graphs. First of all, it's a bit busy, but what you see here is a major component of our model. It's showing the forecast trend of a certain sales region. So what their pipeline forecast looked like over time leading up to the start of a quarter. So you can see here that we've got a big peak as the pipeline's been growing, and then when that pipeline cleanup happens right before the start of the quarter, you get a big drop. Now, when we put this model out in the open, I said to all of my stakeholders, we have to beat that model. We have to change that curve. And the best way for us to do that was to rely on this predictive forecasting. And in order to get to a model that would allow us to intelligently beat the curve, we established a model that would forecast that day one number. And that's a bit of a unique metric, so I'll go into it a little bit more. It refers to the total dollar amount that sales will have in forecast on the first day of a new fiscal quarter. And that pipeline is forecasted to close in the same quarter. And strong day one coverage indicates that a sales team is going to be able to meet their bookings targets. But attaining that coverage means that all your teams need to be aligned on who needs to be focused on, who's having the biggest drops leading up to the start of the quarter. So to achieve our predictive model, we ended up building a bottoms-up forecast. And so that means we're looking at specific characteristics of inputs using machine learning, rather than taking a top-down approach where we can't get that same level of granularity. And by using this bottoms-up approach, we're able to model at the opportunity level. So we can determine if that opportunity is likely to close in the quarter it's forecasted for. And we can look at the rep level. So we can forecast the number and size of opportunities to be opened by each AE. And this gives you the complete picture because it's everything that's involved in pipeline. And as I mentioned, I love showing this graph to sales leaders because it really puts the context behind the model. It shows why it's important. And ultimately, for many of them, scares them and gets them to adopt it. At Snowflake, I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of incredibly smart people. I myself am not a data scientist, but I work with many of them who build these really incredible tables on Snowflake. And we're able to take all of that data coming from these different teams to create a snapshot table that allows us to take a daily picture of what opportunities look like at any point in time. And this is a critical data set for our forecasting model. And we've been able to enhance it with some other key fields because they're critical for the business context in order to maintain that accurate historical reference point. So what are a few of those? Well, we look at opportunity information like the stage name, how old is it, forecast category. We also look at the accounts themselves. What's the point in time firmographic? What industry, what employee size, and how much, if they're a customer, have they spent so far? And then finally, we're looking at sales engagement. So who's working the opportunity? What actions have they taken? And it's all of this data that's the foundation for our machine learning models for pipeline forecasting. And if you're looking to create a similar model, what we encourage is take that level of nuance and look at your own data, decide what to snapshot and what's most important and ultimately most difficult to recreate at a given point in time. Now, fundamentally, the architecture of your machine learning model is always going to attain these three elements that drive business value. So you have build, model, and deploy. So no matter what infrastructure you're using, these are going to be the steps. But for us, we found that Snowflake was scalable enough for our use case, and we didn't need any additional infrastructure. We could deploy it end-to-end using our platform. And we're able to maintain our model through generating training and scoring data, fitting models to score that new data, and ultimately transforming the output into the business-ready data that I get really excited about for our stakeholders. And we don't need anything else in order to make this happen. So how did we put this all together to drive the business value? This is a snapshot of the Tableau dashboard that we put in front of our stakeholders. And something that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation was that this was really geared toward finance, sales, marketing, but that was really sitting with your analysts. It wasn't people who look at data every day. But when I got access to this back in December, I'd say, immediately recognized it as a gold mine. What you can see in this view is we're showing against your bookings goal and your current forecast as of right now in Salesforce, what is our model predicting that your actual day one pipeline is going to look like? And then based on a trailing 4-quarter average of your conversion rates, how much are you likely to attain? And when I got my hands on this dashboard, I started putting it in front of all of my operations counterparts, any analysts, and saying, let me talk to your stakeholders about this, because this is going to scare them, and get them moving. We have a real opportunity here to increase our pipeline, increase our coverage, and ultimately be secure in where we're going to land when that quarter starts. So the way that I really was able to mobilize this and ultimately get results from the model itself was not just by relying on the model to do the work for me. We had to get it in front of our teams, people who don't look at data, who need this to be accessible, but also need it to drive their growth, and enable them to adopt it. I mean, I even got Ulf on this as well. Him and our country manager, all of our marketers, bringing these support functions together so that they were aligned and speaking the same language, drawing the same insights, and then using that to mobilize plans and drive pipeline. And so, as I mentioned, we've had this in place since December of last year, and it takes time. It takes time to run a pipeline correction course. But last quarter in Europe, we saw a 2x plus increase of our day one pipeline conversion rates to bookings. And that was massive. For me, that was the proof that by pushing data to your stakeholders in a really palatable way, like this view, it drives growth. It's driving revenue. And on top of that, it's driving the alignment that we were missing because everybody understood what the goal was. And ultimately, for our finance friends, we were also making smarter investments. The budget looks a lot nicer because we know where to prioritize our time. So at the end of the day, not only are we driving bookings and revenue, driving alignment, but we're also driving those smarter investments. And I want to end on a note from our CMO, who is also Swedish, Denise Persson. And what I love about this is that she shares the understanding that data is critical for the success of our teams. But even more so, she recognizes that it's critical to be able to predict where we're going to start and highlighting that, you can make much smarter decisions with it. And that's one of the reasons why we strive to be the industry's most data-driven marketing team, whether that's through our pipeline forecasting model or any of the other ML models that we're using, like predictive lead scoring. So it was a lot of content, some technical, some not. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about this because it is so exciting to be able to come up and say, look, this had a real business payoff. So here's my email, and hope to hear from you soon. And with that, I will open it up to Q&A.
Thank you, Blaine. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, if you ask a question.
Anything on the digital? I have a question before. I hope it's okay with you. Snowflake is a big global organization. Mm. What was the big challenges in rolling this out? Do you have any?
I mean, it's a very good question. Now, my results that I just spoke about were exclusive to EMEA, and I think that really highlights a clear challenge there. I've presented these methods to our North American counterparts, our APJ counterparts, but really what was missing and what challenged their adoption was not having executive buy-in. I had to have sales buy-in. I took this to our head of sales operations for Europe and to our VP of EMEA sales and said, look, this is going to change your life. But I can only convince your teams to take it on if you agree. So that's really what set it apart, was getting that executive buy-in and then also collaborating with literally any function that touched pipeline. A lot of meetings, a lot of diplomacy, but in the end, really worked for us.
Yeah, oh, nice. Oh, I get this for the question. Oh, thank you.
Looks very nice.
Anyone else has a question? Frederick.
At this point in time, we're solely focused on the opportunity level and the rep level. But for us, really, the next stage is how do we bring in those other interactions with the opportunity that would have an effect? So that's phase 2.
There's a new cap coming here for Frederick. Anything else? Anything on the chat board?
Okay.
One more. So the question is for the digital meeting Teams video meeting, is it just one model or is it a few different models that are like this up into a full forecast depending on different kind of customer behaviors in different different parts of the organization?
Okay. So those different features come into play when, literally, features are added into the model. So as I mentioned, we do look at how previous account behavior has impacted opportunities. So that account piece that's on the opportunity and the AE piece, and because each of those are quite distinct, they then feed into the picture around that account. So you do get that level of variance built into the model, and as the model is learning and training, it's able to score opportunities with those different characteristics in mind and that different variance. So ultimately, we're able to give that kind of multiple view using the one model.
Any more questions? We have one question here.
Do you have any knowledge about how many predictors you used and what kind of machine learning algorithm you tried out?
So what kind of machine learning algorithm is used? And predictors, what kind of attributes are used? Is that the question?
I can't speak to the number, but if you email me, I can give you the contact person who you can reach out to about that, the actual person who built the model, and he can give you a bit more information on that.
We have one more question down there.
So any kind of BI solution always visualize the data quality problems in the data sources. So how big part of the whole project was data quality issues?
It's a good question. And that was something that our sales teams brought up, especially when I started showing them that bell curve graph of, all right, well, we probably see a big drop off because pipeline wasn't clean or the forecast number wasn't accurate. And I think that that did play a big part in the beginning, and that's why it took a period of time in order for us to be in a place where we had a really accurate view of our current pipeline and then an even smarter view of our predictions. So that 2x number that I mentioned, that really threw our trailing 4-quarter average of conversion rates for a loop. So we can even see now, as I look at that pipeline forecast on the daily, how the model is learning and changing and adapting to that on a week-on-week basis. And the nice thing about having a model in place does encourage you to fix your data quality and spend more time there. And we're seeing a more concerted effort among our sales operations team, marketing operations, to get that data correct so that we do have the complete picture.
Any more questions? We have one there. So the question is, how do you explain how the forecast works and how so you can get like from the organization so they can trust it?
I mean, that's a very, very real pain point, and I empathize. Because we also use a weighted Salesforce forecast that the sales team is reporting on in their Monday forecast calls. So by bringing in this predictive model, we're also kind of saying, look, you need to take both into account, but ours is using data science, not just a Salesforce weighting. So when I put this in front of them, the way that I frame it is, this is based on all of these historical data points that are related to the accounts and opportunities and AEs that are living in our Salesforce instance. It is a guidepost, but ultimately it is our most objective view of our forecast because it doesn't rely on the Salesforce next steps. It doesn't rely on you moving the stage forward right now. It's what is data science saying? And that's one of the reasons why in our visualization we show the unweighted forecast next to the predictions so that they can have the comparison. And when I was enabling my teams on this, I really messaged that, look, this comes from data, and we want you to use this as a signpost on your way to getting to the start of the quarter. So use it alongside of the forecast, but also know that this is a really strong indicator. And it also helped highlighting that this is what the CRO and our sales finance team were using to forecast as well, because we had that level of buy-in too.
Any more questions? Any more caps? Yes, a cap. So is there any external data used in the model?
Yes. So we have external data sets from account firmographic companies like Intricately, where we get things like tech spend or number of tech employees. And those aren't ranked as high in the importance of model features, but they do factor in. And so we're bringing those in through data sharing on Snowflake with these different data provider partners.
More questions? I think Ulf has one more cap there waiting. I have one more question, but I only have one cap. So
2 caps.
What will when you have come to this point? What is your next step for marketing and sales within analytics within your organization?
That's a really good question. Well, we recently rolled out a sales qualified opportunity attribution model. So how much is marketing attributed to those opportunities that we've qualified? How do we quantify our return on investment? And we stop at the SQO position right now, but my dream is to get us in a position where we're able to see marketing attribution at every stage of the sales cycle. So really for us, that's the next step. So we can see, in order to get that predicted forecast number up, what investments do we need to make at certain points in time? So that's something that the model owner is looking into, and hopefully, something that we can present on in the future.
So how much does the cap give, in sales? Is that can I? Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did that cap get us to the next opportunity stage?
The next sale. Yeah.
Did it increase the ACV?
Interesting. Interesting.
So now you have to buy, Gustav.
Yes, I think so. Any more questions? We have one here.
Which other tools did you find good with Snowflake? I saw Tableau, for example. There did it modeling. What are other things that you find this is a good synergy with Snowflake?
What tools work with Snowflake?
Oh, that's a really good question. Specifically for this model.
For modeling.
Let me actually, if you don't mind, I'll just pull up my ecosystem slide because that helps me speak a little bit more toward it. We are able to take a large number of partners. So from this one, you do see that we work with DBT. We also are working with DataRobot as one of our data science modeling partners. Alex can definitely speak more about which tools you can use to integrate on Snowflake, but we're constantly expanding our ecosystem.
I know that Fredrik knows a lot of tools as well, so you can talk to him as well.
For this one specifically, we were using DBT. We weren't using DataRobot, but that's something that we've used in some of our other predictive models.
Any more questions? Yes, we have one more here.
I was thinking about the size of the operation. How I would say large, but I should probably say small. How small of an operation could you have to use something? It's because you need a lot of data to
So the question is, how much data do you need to make this kind of a forecast?
I can't tell you the exact number of rows, but I will say a lot. We had one person working on this, and I know that he was bringing in data from all through Salesforce, the fact that we're snapshotting every single day, and we went back, I think, at least 2 fiscal years. So that, and then on top of all of the external data that we were bringing in from like Intricately or Everstring. So yeah, a lot.
How large of a sales operation was it?
What do you mean?
That you took the data?
I can't say how large our Salesforce instance is, but definitely big enough to feed 4 different theaters.
All right, now we're already taken a few minutes from our precious fika tid. But I think Blaine will be here. We have one more question. All right, last man.
I was just wondering, when you present the model to your sales team, then they're using that model to adapt their sales strategy.
Yes.
Do you see that adaptation then back into your model when you rerun the model? And what happens to the model then? Does it become better? Or
So the question is, I'm just saying for the digital people, what happens with the model when people are acting to the forecast model, like in next step? What happens with the prediction possibility in the model, I guess? Is that okay?
That's a really good question because it's something that we're facing now with having such a big change in our pipeline to bookings conversion rate. It increased significantly last quarter, and it's changed the trailing 4 quarters average to a point where the model is now having to catch up to our current pipeline behavior. One of the things that I mentioned in my presentation was that my dream is to get that bell curve to the top, and then it ceases to be a bell curve and it just stays flat. And as we start to see more of that behavior, the model is learning and adapting and running regularly to start to be able to accommodate that into the predictive number. So I think it will take this quarter in order for us to get in a position where we can see, an even more accurate number. But to someone else's point about data quality, that feeds into it as well. You clean up your data quality, you increase your conversion rates, but the model is constantly learning and adapting to that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
An applause.
Thank you, Blaine. It's one of your bottles I'm giving back.
Thank you.
Nu är det en halvtimmes paus för lite fika. Och man kan säkert fråga Blaine om fler saker under fikapausen. Och jag tror att det finns säkert någon keps kvar också som man kan få. Så att det finns fika både där och där uppe med lite sötsaker. Och så ses vi här igen klockan 3.
Yes.
Tack så mycket.